really liked the way you put it at the start of the podcast, and you talked about how even this morning when you got up your session, you hit snooze, and creates that real element to you about, just because you're an athlete doesn't mean you're 100% motivated all the time. It doesn't mean that, you're not working hard behind the scenes on your own projects and dedicating the hours week to week. I think it's, as you said, with social media, it's so easy to fall into the trap of seeing, everyone's highlight reel and just thinking that their life is perfect. But really, there's a lot of hard work that's gone in behind the scenes. We spoke about this with Mel Gainsford about, in the early days, she had to move from her home in Narromine to the Big Smoke in Sydney at the age of 9, with moving away from her parents and her home to undertake her training to be, a sprinter. We've all had to make those sacrifices. Like, you had to move away from Holly for 3 years. You had to forgo all those potential sponsorship opportunities that existed in Sydney. So a lot of sacrifices you've had to make along the way, and a lot of challenges and hurdles. And one of those hurdles, which you experienced early in your career, like many athletes, has been injury. And so you injured your knee in 2012 at the Ironman series in Perth, Western Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment when you injured your knee?
Yeah, it was actually at Scarborough Beach. Yeah, and I think I was a couple of points off leading the series, the Ironman series. I think it was round 4 or 5 at the time, and I was probably having the best series I've had to date. Yeah, and it was purely off the start. I ran down and I picked up it was an endurance event, so we had a 5-kilometer ski, a 1-kilometer 1-kilometer swim leg, a 3K run, and then a 4-kilometer board leg, right? And we did that twice. And it was at the very start where I ran down, picked up my ski. Just as I was getting into the water, I hit a pothole, hyperextended my left knee, and just pretty much blew everything out the back. My PCL and my medial, just everything, just an absolute mess. And look, I didn't know the severity of the damage I'd done. So I just jumped on my ski as you do in any other race, and just keep going for it. I was probably behind a fair bit and caught my way back into the pack and got myself towards the front. It wasn't until I got off my surf ski and did a small transition into that swim leg, I realized I couldn't even put weight on it. I thought it might have been, like in a game of footy or even walking down the street, if you roll your ankle, you kind of walk it out and it's all good to go. There was no chance of that. And I finished the 1-kilometer swim leg, and at the time, Hayden Quinn, he was commentating, and then my wife Holly was there, and they carried me out of the water. And man, like, that was like, I just physically could not go any further. Like, I wanted to try and just keep pushing, but I just couldn't. And I realized right then and there that series is done. It was really, really hard to swallow. I had made the move from Sydney up to there, put all my eggs in that basket, and had a really, really red hot crack, and that happened. And I felt sorry for myself for probably a week. And then, I got some really good advice from a mentor that's not in the sport. And they said that you got 2 options here, mate. You can sit here and feel sorry for yourself, or you can park it and start working on your rehab and get on with life. And, I've carried that through to right till today. And it's man, like that day, I look back now and just go, shit, that was one of the toughest kind of things emotionally that I've dealt with. And I know it's injury. So in the scheme of things in life, it's tiny, right? There's way bigger things that go on in life that are way worse than that. But to me, that was my life. That was my all. And it felt like it just crumbled. But we got back on the horse and kept pushing.
So how did you come back from that mentally? I guess what advice did you receive, and how did that influence you? Obviously with your rehab as well, we talked about how you might not have been on the same income at this stage, or the endorsements, because it was only early in your career, wasn't it? About 10 years ago now. So
yeah.
Did you have to pay for your own rehabilitation, or were you, was that sorted out through the clubs or any sponsors?
Yeah, I was quite lucky with the rehab and all that. It was covered in the event that I was done, so the insurance of the event covered it. but it was tough. And like the first probably month was really tough. And then I started to see progress, and I doubled down and became obsessed with the process of getting better and stronger, and how I'm gonna, come back better than this. And you know what? It's amazing what the body can do. It recovers, and you get back into a training plan, and you start setting new goals again. And there is always that fear in the back of your mind that you're going to run into another pothole and do your leg again. And that was more what I had to overcome, more than just physical stuff. It was just that mental fear of it happening again.
And so how long did the rehabilitation phase take? How long was it before you were back in the water on the board? Or were you doing paddling, and swimming work without weight bearing initially?
Yeah, I was doing hardly anything, to be honest, man. It was because the swelling was so severe in like everything from my knee was down into my calf. So it was just like there was just so much fluid in my calf. It felt like that my calf was actually going to explode. So like I had to take probably, I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks of just like icing that for that swelling to go down. And then we had to, start kind of that rehab stuff. And yeah, I probably got back in swimming maybe 3 months or something. Maybe 2 months. Yeah, just starting to get the body moving, because I had to start moving. That's when I feel like you can get yourself into a bit of a rut, especially if you're injured or, things aren't going your way. If you're not moving, that's where you start mentally getting quite affected.
In terms of the lowest point in your career, that moment then when you had that injury, looking back on that now, and we talk a lot about how Ironman is such an unpredictable sport. You're in that open environment of the water, where the conditions always changing. One day there's 12 foot waves. Sometimes you got super cold waters. You got gale force winds. I imagine that the nature of that environment also lends itself to injuries like this, with soft sand, hard sand, a number of different competitors all banked up in the one spot, racing to get out around the can and get back in off the beach. You do anything you can to win. How prominent are injuries like this in Ironman sport?
Yeah, they're probably not they probably don't occur as often as you think they would. There's always little niggles here and there, bumps and bruises and things like that. But I think you train in so many different conditions to prepare yourself for all those different conditions, whether it be hard sand, soft sand, all that sort of thing. So for me, I like to go in as positive as I can be, and regardless of the conditions, it's always perfect for something. If the surf's big, it's perfect that you get to kind of race your own race and not worry about the other guys, and you get to get a good wave, back in, or get hit by a big wave. When it's flat, there's an opportunity to sit and kind of draft and wash ride people. If the sand's hard or soft, it's like, hard sand, it's easy to run on. Soft sand, it's, other guys struggle on it, so I always try and find somewhat of a perfect scenario to latch onto, opposed to going, oh man, the surf's big, I'm going to get smashed.
Yeah.